Saturn Theory Overview. The Saturn Theory arose from a historical argument, in the sense that that argument relates to the human past, as implied by the details of human memory in ancient times, and by human artifacts, in ways that will be obvious. However, the historical argument raises numerous questions of physical fact and physical theory, some of which will not be readily resolved, and several of which may well stand as serious obstacles in the minds of skeptically minded, feet-on-the-ground folks. One obvious and immediate question is whether something as ambiguous as myth could actually qualify as evidence. The historical argument focuses on points of agreement in the memories of widespread races, suggesting levels of coherence, often missed by historians and anthropologists, and raising the possibility that this coherence arises from a core of human experience that has been missed as well. There is an overarching idea in this argument. We've not only misunderstood the past, we've failed to recognize the consistency of ancient memory in pointing to extraordinary events never considered by modern science. Remarkably, every motive of our early ancestors directs our attention to experiences impossible to comprehend in terms of any natural phenomena occurring today. This consistency will be seen even at the most fundamental levels of human memory, in the most deeply rooted themes of the first civilizations. 1. The universal memory of a former age of the gods. 2. The universal memory of an ancestral golden age, inaugurating the age of the gods. 3. The universal memory of a celestial king of the world, whose life inspired the ancestral leap into civilization. 4. Description of the gods as luminaries of immense size and power, wielding weapons of thunder and stone. 5. The universal claim that the ancient world evolved by critical phases or cycles, punctuated by sweeping catastrophe. 6. Global traditions of gods and heroes ruling for a time, then departing amid terrifying spectacles and upheavals. 7. The frequently stated transfiguration of the departed gods into distant stars. 8. The identification of the ruling gods with planets in the first astronomies. 9. The relentless urge of star worshippers to draw pictures of celestial forms never seen in our sky. 10. The desperate yearning to recover the semblance of a lost cosmic order. 11. Their collective efforts to replicate in architecture the towering forms claimed to have existed in primeval times. 12. Their festive recreations through mystery, plays, and symbolic rites of cosmic violence and disorder. 13. Their reputation through ritual sacrifice of the deaths or ordeals of the gods. 14. The brutal and ritualistic wars of expansion, celebrated as a repetition of the cosmic devastation wrought in the wars of the gods. Such motives as these constitute, in fact, the most already verifiable underpinnings of ancient ritual, myth, and symbol. How strange that in our incessant glance backwards, the builders of the first civilizations never remembered anything resembling the natural world in which we live. What is needed in the face of unusual but widely repeated memories is brutal intellectual honesty. How did human consciousness emerge from the womb of nature, converge on the same improbable ideas, contradicting nature? For centuries we've lived under the illusion that our ancestors simply made up explanations of natural phenomena, they didn't understand. But that's not the problem. What the myth makers interpreted or explained through stories and symbols and ritual reenactments is an unrecognized world, a world of alien sights and sounds, of celestial forms, of cosmic spectacles and earth-shaking events that do not occur in our world. That is the problem. From an evaluation of the global themes of ancient cultures, we have hypothesized a world order never envisioned by mainstream theory, a world in which planets moved on different courses, appearing huge in the sky. Heaven-spanning celestial forms dominated human imagination to the point of obsession at the time of civilization's birth. Our contention will be that hundreds of ancient themes speak for a unified experience, an experience more specific in context and detail than any of us had ever imagined when we started our research. No universal theme stands alone or in isolation from any of the others. All are connected. All speak for the presence of a coherent memory beneath the surface of seemingly random detail. In offering these summaries, I am not asking or expecting anyone to embrace the extraordinary theory of planetary history involved, only to consider highly interesting evidence. One of the values of this reinterpretation of evidence is the model works, and it explains the subject matter. Hence, whatever you may think of the claimed events, merely discovering the active memory will throw remarkable new light on the ancient structures of human consciousness. In the course of these summaries, questions and challenges will be welcome, and wherever possible, I will try to incorporate these into the narrative as we go along. End of Part 1. David Talbott. Velikovsky's Comet, Part 2, Venus, Smoking Star. In arguing for the cometary character of Venus, Velikovsky cited Aztec records suggesting that the planet Venus shared the same title given a comet. The early traditions of peoples of Mexico, written down in pre-Columbian days, relate that Venus smoked. The star that smoked, the Estrella que humeva, was Citlal, which the Spaniards called Venus. Now I ask, says Alexander Humboldt, what optical illusion could give Venus the appearance of a star throwing out smoke? Sahagan, the 16th century Spanish authority on Mexico, wrote that the Mexicans called a comet a star that smoked. It may thus be concluded that since the Mexicans called Venus a star that smoked, they considered it a comet. In Bob Forrest's mind, the Aztec references could have nothing to do with what may or may not have happened back in the mid-2nd millennium BC, because the references to Venus smoking came from the 16th century AD. In a number of instances, Aztec records say that Earth shook and the star Citlal, Venus, smoked. To account for the curiosity, Forrest simply accepts the guess of Alexander Humboldt, who suggested that the smoke related to the volcano Orizaba, situated to the east of the city Colula, and whose glow, when seen in the distance, resembled or was symbolically related to the rising morning star. Forrest was apparently satisfied with the first guess he uncovered. All we have are some 16th century records which say every so often that the star smoked. But since the smoking seems frequently to be intertwined with earthquake activity, Humboldt's assumption seems reasonable. With that stated, Forrest moved on, never returning to the issue of the Aztec smoking star. A quite different approach would have been to explore the possibility of a broader Venus-Comet association, to see where the available evidence leads. Guided by this intent, Forrest would have quickly found, for example, that Aztec association of earthquake activity with smoking stars belonged to the general mythology of the comet among the Aztecs. Thus, with respect to the comets portrayed in the Codex Vaticanus and Codex Tellerino-Rimensis, the respected authority on Mexican astronomy, Anthony Aveni, writes, "Comets are represented frequently by surviving historical documents, usually by a stellar image on a blue background with emanating streams of smoke. These usually signify that a person of nobility will die. For example, one picture of the death of the ruler Tenochtitlan followed the apparition of a comet. Later, another comet occurs, then an earthquake, all of nature's events being connected in the Aztec cosmic view. As I hope to demonstrate fully in this series of articles, the connectedness of these images derives from a universal substratum of myth: appearance of a comet, death of a great ruler, quaking earth, not in Mexico alone, but in one ancient culture after another. The skywatchers repeatedly placed these unusual themes in juxtaposition. Despite this crucial fact, no comet observed by science has ever justified the symbolic connection. But Forrest seems unaware that the language employed in astrological texts and omens is drawn from ancient mythical images, following his methodological ground rules. Therefore, no records of portents in the sky recorded in the last 3 millennia would be of any relevance to Velikovsky's argument, even when repeatedly attached explicit cometary images to Venus. With respect to the image of the planet Venus as the smoking star in the Codex Tellerino-Rimensis, Aveni offers his own attempt at an explanation. Perhaps a cometary object appeared near the planet. Of course, Forrest could just as easily have cited this guess, then dropped the whole issue. But is there something more worth investigating here? Throughout the Americas, including Mexico, natives called a comet the star with hair, or long-haired star, or main star, an appellation that fits comfortably with the global language of the comet. In fact, the long-haired star is the single most common phrase for the comet around the world, and our own word for comet comes from the Greek kometes, the long-haired star. Yucatec Maya dictionaries give a gloss for smoke star or main star. But curiously, the Aztecs used this very language for Venus. As noted by Velikovsky, they called the planet Zantemoc, meaning the main star, or long-haired star, and not the Aztecs alone, for one finds among the Maya the same enigmatic association of the planet Venus with long flowing hair. A commonly observed Maya hieroglyph is the Caban curl, a flowing tassel or lock of hair repeatedly attached to acknowledged Venus systems, including the glyph name of Venus itself. To encounter the long flowing locks of Venus, one need only consult available sources. Turn to the Incan language of Venus, for example. I can remember in the first few days of investigating images of Venus, looking through a standard summary of Incan mythology, and encountering the name of Venus as Chasca, translated as long-haired star, the precise phrase for the comet in the global lexicon. It was instances such as this that continued to fuel my own interest in learning more. According to William Prescott, Venus was known to the Peruvians by the name of Chasca, or youth with long curling locks. Burr Cartwright Brundage tells us that among the Inca, Venus was the radiant star with flowing hair, the morning star, Chasca, the disheveled one, dispensed stories of freshness and loveliness upon flowers, princesses and virgins below. She was the deity of the rosy cloud rack of morning, and when she shook out her long hair, she scattered the dew upon the earth. The point here is that Forrest's explanation of the Aztec Venus smoking star association fails to acknowledge converging lines of evidence. Aztec comet as smoking star, Aztec Venus as smoking star, Aztec and Mayan long-haired star as comet, Aztec Venus as long-haired star, Mayan Venus with or as flowing lock or tassel, Incan Venus as long-haired star. Hence, the methodological issue is placed in sharp relief. Here is another way of looking at the issue logically. Around the world, there are only a small number of pre-astronomical hieroglyphs for the comet. You could, in fact, count the primary glyphs on the fingers of one hand. Heart, soul of a deceased god-king or great leader rising in the sky. Long-haired star, star with flowing locks, mane, tresses, disheveled hair, beard, hairy tail. Torch star, ember, flame, smoke, smoking star, train of fire, spark or train of sparks. Celestial feather, winged star, soul bird, bright feathers, feathered headdress, shining bird's tail, cosmic serpent, dragon, or similar monster. The remaining general hieroglyphs for the comet could be counted on the fingers of your second hand. They include a sword, a bundle of grass or straw, whisk broom, or a spiraled rope, cord, tie, or knot. At what point, then, does a coincidence or seemingly irrational use of language, comet words or glyphs attached to Venus, become an anomaly worth pursuing? Forrest not only sidesteps the implications of parallel cometry, images of Venus in other lands, he ignores the convergence of such images in Mexico. As the methodology, the approach is disastrous because there is much, much more. And next we have Quetzalcoatl. In the popular Aztec myth of Quetzalcoatl, the Venus comet anomaly grows by leaps and bounds, and in this case, the completeness of the commentary motifs leaves no room for ad hoc explanations. Whether remembered by the Aztecs as a former great king and founder of the Golden Age, or a former sun god ruling a primordial epoch, Quetzalcoatl was a cultural hero without equal in the Aztec pantheon. His continuance adorning temple walls and the stucco bases of pyramids, painted on countless frescoes and codices, and engraved on sarcophagi and monoliths strewn across Mexico. The climatic event in the Quetzalcoatl myth is the god's catastrophic death and transformation in an overwhelming disaster, an event endlessly repeated in sacrificial rites, and supplying the cornerstone of Aztec calendar rituals and astronomical symbolism. In a pervasive version of the myth, at the death of Quetzalcoatl, the god's heart and soul, the god's heart or soul rose in the sky as a great spark or ember, trailing smoke and fire, a star whose fiery train the Aztecs portrayed as the streaming tail of the Quetzal bird. Was this flaming star a comet? One notes that the Quiche Maya called the comet Uji Chumao, tail of the star, and the Aztec artists often draw comets as stars with quetzaltails, the bright and luminous plumes of the Quetzal, providing a particularly well-suited hieroglyph for a comet. The symbolism accords well with that of other peoples. The Pawnee gave to the comet the name Paragus Kuka, feathered headdress, an appellation that proves telling. See later discussion of the plumed headdress in our next installment. In Africa, the streaming comet's tail was identified as the feathers of the nightjar, and the natives say of a comet, it is wearing streaming feathers. Astronomer Carl Sagan, or as well would say Carl Sagan, in his review of worldwide comet motifs, notes that comets are called tail stars, and stars with long feathers. Germanic races called a comet the peacock's tail, while in China a comet was seen as both a peacock's tail and a pheasant's tail. Isn't it amazing how it seems like everything that we know comes from Saturn Theory? It's just embarrassingly rich with evidence. that Quetzalcoatl's flaming or plumed heart soul meant a comet-like star is substantiated by converging lines of evidence. Its cometary character, for example, would agree with a general tradition among the Aztecs that comets were the ascending souls of great chiefs. The Quetzalcoatl was the model of the good king. It gives perfect sense to the symbolic motif. The Quetzalcoatl was also the prototype of the Aztec shaman. That is, he was the celestial figure whose biography provided the general myth and symbolism of the shaman. It is thus worth noting that in South American lore, the soul of a shaman was believed to depart in the form of a comet. Noteworthy is the fact that a comet appearing sometime prior to the conquest of the Aztecs by Cortez was reckoned as a positive sign that Quetzalcoatl would eventually return to Mexico. To suggest that the heart and soul of Quetzalcoatl rose as a comet is simply to place the Aztec symbolism alongside a universal tradition. Cultures around the world proclaim the comet to be the soul of a dying king. Thus, we have listed this significant theme as number 1 in our short list of comet symbols above. See discussion to follow. But there is a problem here. While several variations on the story of Quetzalcoatl's death may have been preserved, one of the central elements is the identification of the heart soul as the planet Venus. Burr Cartwright Brundage gives this summary. The god's heart, like a great spark, flies up to become new and splendid divinity. The morning star. Thus, a narrative source declares, then the heart of Quetzalcoatl rose into the heaven, and according to the elders, was transformed into the morning star, and Quetzalcoatl was called the Lord of Dawn. We shall have more to say about this transformation. The fact at hand is that in their myths and rites, the Aztecs say the separated heart soul of Quetzalcoatl, following a period of darkened sky and cosmic upheaval, rose as the planet Venus. If the story has roots in any celestial occurrence, as explicitly claimed in the myths, the death of Quetzalcoatl must have involved a cosmic disaster of unprecedented scale. For no mythical historical event left a deeper impression on the Aztec thought and culture. Upon this traumatic episode, the Aztecs evolved their collective sense of cyclical time, including a calendar of world ages. The death of Quetzalcoatl, the onset of celestial confusion, and the transformation of his heart-soul into the planet Venus meant nothing less than the end of one world age and the beginning of another. David Talbott. Excellent. Hey, I hope everybody's doing okay and you're staying healthy.